You saved my daughter, human. Now by ancient law, you must take us both. They say the universe is vast and indifferent, that stars burn, planets fall, and no one is coming to save you. But what if one man utterly alone in the dark, chose to act? What if that single decision changed not only the fate of an alien world, but the course of his own humanity? This is the story of Kade Rylan, a drifting mechanic from Earth, who intercepted a catastrophe no one else could see, and defied an entire civilization to prevent it. What he didn't expect was her Kaelis Vaerra, daughter of an alien governor, sharp-eyed and electric with secrets. And even less expected? Her mother. Regal. Terrifying. Grieving. Bound by an ancient law older than stars, Kade doesn't just rescue them, he becomes part of them. And when prophecy, power, and forbidden feelings collide, the question is no longer will they survive, but what does it mean to belong to more than one soul? Stick with this story. And if you feel something stir inside you as the bond deepens, drop a comment below. Let's see who else out there still believes in fate. The Eltaris belt shimmered with drifting debris, glowing faintly against the starlight. Inside a worn mining vessel named Starbreaker, Kade Rylan hunched over the navigation panel, his eyes red-rimmed from sleepless nights and recycled air. He hadn't spoken to another living soul in 3 days. The hum of the ship was the only voice he'd grown used to. A low pulse echoed through the hull. His proximity sensors flickered and blared. Kade sat upright, blinking in disbelief. A gravitational anomaly was blooming just outside the orbit of Carus, a terraformed moon housing one of the Vireni's remote research colonies. The readings were wrong. Or no, they were right, just impossible. It wasn't a natural storm. It had symmetry. Intent. He initiated a second scan, watching the data spill across the screen like blood. Anomaly expansion rate, accelerating. Estimated gravitational collapse, 87% within 12 hours. Planetary integrity, compromised. Kade swore under his breath. He had no jurisdiction. No one would believe him. And certainly not the Vireni. He stared out at the swirling dark forming like a wound in space. The right thing to do was clear. But no one would thank him. No one would remember. He turned the ship toward Carus anyway. On the surface of Carus, Kaelis Vaerra stood alone beneath a lavender sky that trembled with strange static. Her skin glowed faintly, bioluminescent veins pulsing silver beneath her translucent complexion. Her hair, white as starlight, danced weightlessly around her shoulders. She was calm. But something deep within her vibrated with warning. She had sent 3 alerts to the Central Vireni Council. Each had been dismissed. Localized flux. Continue observation. She clenched her fists. Lies. Or worse, politics. This was no anomaly. It was a weapon. As she looked to the sky again, something new appeared. A ship. Small. Scorched. Human. A message pinged across the colony's encrypted channel, forcing itself into restricted frequency. To any Vireni official, I'm Kade Rylan, independent mechanic, Earth origin. You have a storm coming that's going to rip your moon apart. I have proof. I'm not asking. I'm landing. The security network lit up in protest, but Kaelis held up a hand. She stared at the ship breaching their airspace, dipping into the atmosphere with reckless urgency. There was something about its descent desperate, raw, human. She walked out to meet it. Dust scattered as the ship landed rough. Panels cracked, steam hissed from the hull. Then the ramp lowered, and he stepped into her world. Kade was taller than she expected. His suit was scratched, patched, obviously self-repaired. His face carried the grit of someone used to being ignored and doing the right thing anyway. Their eyes met across the dying light. "You're human," she said. "You're the first one here not trying to arrest me," he replied. She reached out, palm open. He hesitated, then gave her the data core. Her fingers glided across the device, drawing up projections. What she saw made her blood chill. The collapse had already begun. "No one believed me," he said quietly. "I do," she replied, just as the ground quivered beneath them. In the sky above, a sliver of black energy split the clouds, widening. It was beautiful, in the way death sometimes was. She turned to him, hair glowing like fire in the wind. "I know a way out. But I'll need your help." Kade didn't hesitate. "Lead the way." They ran, side by side, through silver corridors as alarms began to scream across the colony. He didn't know her name. She didn't know what price he had already paid. But between them, a spark had already ignited, one the stars themselves might have seen coming. The corridors of the Vireni research colony shimmered with veins of pale blue light, pulsing in sync with the moon's subtle gravity shifts. The floor beneath them trembled again, barely, like the exhale of something ancient awakening. Kade followed Kaelis through the winding halls. Her movements were swift but fluid, more graceful than any human he'd ever seen. Her skin still glowed faintly in the emergency lighting, a living pulse of light guiding him forward. "You said you had a way out," he said, breathing harder than he wanted to show. "I do. But it's sealed." She paused in front of a crystalline door, pressing her hand against a glowing node. It blinked red. "Denied." Kaelis frowned. "They've already started the lockdown. Can we break it?" "Not without tripping every alarm on this hemisphere." Kade stepped beside her. "Then we don't break it. We reroute it." Her eyes flicked toward him, cautious. "You're an engineer?" "I'm a mechanic," he said, kneeling beside the panel, tools already in hand. "And this isn't the first time I've had to bypass security systems built by someone who thought they were too smart to be fooled." She watched him work, the quiet hum of the failing moon around them. Something about the way his fingers moved, decisive, unshaking even as the walls vibrated, made her feel something she hadn't felt since she was a child. Trust. Within seconds, the door hissed open. Behind it was a narrow tunnel lit by organic light and flowing heat from beneath the moon's crust. The air shimmered with gravitational stress. They stepped through as the door closed behind them, sealing with a sigh. "This tunnel leads to the surface dome," Kaelis said. "If we can reach my ship, I can override the station's denial protocols and initiate planetary broadcast. Someone will have to listen." Kade gave her a crooked smile. "You're more optimistic than me?" Kaelis tilted her head. "Optimism isn't optional when your people's survival depends on it." Then came the sound boots. Marching. Distant, but closing fast. Vireni security. Kaelis grabbed Kade's arm. "They'll try to detain you. Claim you're spreading fear. They'll never admit they were wrong, not until it's too late." Kade's eyes narrowed. "Then we don't give them the chance." He pulled her into an alcove just as two armored Vireni guards passed. Their movements were precise, voices sharp and cold. "We need to detain the human. Lady Kaelis has been marked as compromised." Kaelis flinched. "They've turned on me," she whispered. "I'm not just a scientist anymore. I'm a threat to the narrative." Kade touched her shoulder, grounding her. "Then you're doing something right." They waited until the guards passed, then crept toward the exit. But the next chamber wasn't empty. A tall figure in ceremonial armor waited near the egress. He stepped forward, helmet retracting to reveal silver skin and burning violet eyes. "Lady Kaelis," he said. "Your mother requests your presence." Kaelis froze. "General Saren." "She is waiting." But not for him. The general's gaze turned coldly toward Kade. Kade reached for the wrench holstered at his belt. Saren raised a hand. "You misunderstand. The human comes too. The governor has invoked the covenant of salvation." Kaelis's breath caught. That law hasn't been enacted in centuries. "And yet," Saren said, turning slowly toward the exit, "here we are." Kade looked at her. "What the hell is the covenant of salvation?" She stared at him, struggling for words. "It means," she whispered, "you saved me and now, you belong to both of us." The chamber was unlike anything Kade had seen before. Walls of shimmering light breathed in rhythmic pulses, as if the room itself were alive. The air was warm, dense with some subtle energy he couldn't name. Beneath his boots, the floor glowed softly with every step, responding to his presence like ripples on water. Kaelis walked ahead in silence. There was tension in her posture now, shoulders drawn back too sharply, every movement deliberate. She hadn't spoken since the words "you belong to both of us" left her mouth. Kade followed, heart pounding with a quiet dread. At the end of the hall stood a tall Vireni woman draped in robes that flickered like starlight. Her skin was a deeper silver than Kaelis's, her presence heavier, older, commanding. Her eyes, impossibly blue, turned to him and everything else in the room faded. This was Vaerra. He could feel her gaze pressing into him, not unkind, but undeniable, like the pull of gravity. "So," she said, her voice a river running deep. "You are the human who tore through a forbidden landing zone, bypassed Vireni military systems, and carried my daughter out of certain destruction." Kade swallowed. "Yeah. That's me." Vaerra stepped closer. "You understand what you've done?" "Saved a life," he replied. "No. You triggered the covenant." Her words were slow, deliberate. Kaelis stood still beside her, but her eyes were pleading. "Say nothing, just listen." "I didn't agree to any covenant," Kade said quietly. "Consent is not required when fate has already spoken," Vaerra said. "The covenant of salvation is older than Vireni memory. When a non-Vireni saves a royal life in full knowledge of the risk, a soul bond is formed. One that transcends species, time, and law." Kade stepped back. "A soul bond?" Kaelis finally spoke. "It's more than ceremony. It's emotional resonance. Telepathic alignment. Even memory sharing, in time. It grows stronger when mutual choice deepens it." "Choice," he repeated. "So I have one?" Vaerra tilted her head. "You always had choice. But destiny is rarely swayed by denial." She moved closer, too close, and placed one hand on his temple. "May I?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded. Her touch was electric. In an instant, Kade saw flashes, memories not his own. A tower falling in silence. A child with glowing eyes. A storm breaking apart the sky. A promise whispered to stars. He felt her grief, her wisdom, her loneliness stretching over decades of guarded rulership. Then it was gone. He stumbled back, breath stolen. What was that?" "A glimpse," she said softly. "What we become when the bond completes." Kaelis stepped forward now, her voice trembling. "I didn't expect this," she said to her mother. "Not with him. I didn't even know if the bond would form. Vaerra nodded. Neither did I. But it has. And now he must choose. She looked at Kade again, her expression unreadable. You are not a captive, human. But if you walk away now, you sever something the stars themselves have acknowledged. Something sacred. Kade looked between them. One woman, a ruler cloaked in sorrow and centuries of duty. The other, her daughter, bright-eyed and defiant, still half wild from the storm he pulled her from. He didn't know what to say. But somewhere in his chest, something ancient and terrifyingly beautiful had already begun to awaken. The alarms began just as Kaelis reached for Kade's hand. A deep, low tone reverberated through the chamber, less a sound, more a warning felt in the bones. Vaerra's head turned sharply, eyes narrowing. Her fingertips glowed faintly, reacting to something beyond Kade's perception. They've found us, she murmured. Who? Kade asked, already moving toward the door. Not the council, Kaelis said, her voice tight. Worse. She tapped into the room's hollow grid. A series of red icons flared across the map, converging on the colony. The air chilled. Voron assassins, Vaerra said quietly. They serve no flag. Only death. Someone doesn't want the covenant completed. Kade clenched his jaw. So what happens if it is completed? Vaerra stepped forward. We become more than bonded. We see as one. Feel as one. Move as one. The site becomes stable, permanent. And right now, Kaelis said, loading an energy baton into her belt, that might be the only thing that keeps us alive. The lights flickered. Power drained in waves. Kade reached for his sidearm. It felt woefully small. They're here. The corridor outside was dark, but not silent. Kade heard at first whispers, like the wind moving wrong. Then shadows bending where there should be none. Voron assassins didn't use ships. They appeared. They moved through magnetic folds and memory gaps, slipping past scanners and cameras like ghosts. The first one struck without warning. Kaelis dropped, sweeping her baton low in a crescent. The Voron reeled, skin flickering with silver distortion before collapsing into smoke. Vaerra raised a palm, and the hallway lit up with a beam of blinding starlight. Another figure disintegrated mid-step. Kade covered the rear, shooting into the gloom. His rounds were fast, but their movements were faster. Too many. We can't hold this corridor, he shouted. We need higher ground. There's a core chamber above, Vaerra said. If we reach it, we can activate the planetary fail-safe. Fail-safe? Kade shouted. A pulse? It'll neutralize all psionic interference like the Voron cloaking fields. Kaelis met his eyes. But it'll also trigger the covenant. He blinked. Wait, what? The energy pulse will lock our bond. It will finish it. A hiss sounded above them, an assassin dropping from the ceiling. Kaelis moved first, intercepting it mid-air, but not fast enough to avoid the blade that sliced along her arm. She gasped, stumbling. Kade was there instantly, firing twice into the creature's center mass. Smoke. Ash. She fell into him, eyes wide with pain and fear, not from the wound, but from what it meant. You can't hesitate, she whispered. I'm not. They burst into the core chamber, the door sealing behind them. A massive crystalline construct hummed in the center, pulsing like a heart. Vaerra stepped toward it, her expression unreadable. This is your last chance, she said to Kade. Once this is activated, there's no going back. You will feel everything. You will carry us inside you. And we you. Kade looked at Kaelis. She was wounded, breathless, but radiant with resolve. He looked at Vaerra, stoic, timeless, yet somehow aching beneath the composure. And he realized, he'd never been more alone in his life than before he met them. He stepped forward and placed his hand on the crystal. I'm already carrying you. The light surged. The room vanished in white. When the world returned, he was on his knees. But he wasn't alone. Kaelis was beside him, her hand on his heart, her thoughts in his mind. Vaerra stood above them both, her energy threading into his bloodstream like wildfire. He felt them completely. Their joy. Their pain. Their longing. He saw stars that had never been charted. Memories that weren't his. Echoes of a love that had waited lifetimes to be spoken. And through it all, one truth pulsed clear. They belonged to each other. The doors blew open. Shadows poured in. But now, Kade saw their weak points. Their patterns. Their fear. He rose slowly, unafraid. Let's end this. Together, they moved as one. The Voron moved like nightmares, blades woven into their limbs, eyes like polished void. But this time, Kade didn't flinch. He saw them. Not just with his eyes but with something deeper. The sight, now fully awakened, bloomed behind his ribs like fire spreading through roots. Each assassin's movements flickered like outlines in his mind, each intention arriving before the action. Kaelis moved beside him, her thoughts echoed in his. Left flank, 3 incoming. I've got the one on the right. Vaerra's voice slid into both their minds, not spoken, not shouted. A command formed of clarity and calm. The heart is near the center. Remove it, and they fall. Kade shifted, dropped, fired. 3 shadows fell at once. Smoke curled. Silence rang. But it wasn't over. Across the chamber, a Voron unlike the others stepped forward, taller, marked with glowing runes across its armor. It did not hide. It smiled. Your bond was predicted, it said in a voice like rusted glass. But prophecy can be broken. Kade steadied his weapon. Then try. The Voron lunged not at him, but at Kaelis. She wasn't fast enough. But Kade was. He dove between them, arms outstretched, catching the blade meant for her. Pain exploded in his side, white-hot and unforgiving. He dropped to one knee. Kaelis screamed no, felt it through the bond, as if she were bleeding with him. She struck forward, pure emotion turned weapon. The air shimmered around her, and the Voron froze, stunned. Vaerra raised her hand and released a pulse of white energy, slicing the enemy in two. Silence fell again. Real this time. Kaelis collapsed beside Kade, cradling him. Don't you dare, she whispered, don't you leave me? His breath was ragged. His skin pale. Vaerra knelt beside them, her hands glowing. She pressed her palm to his chest. A pulse traveled through all 3 of them like leaping across skin, memory, and soul. You are not dying today, she whispered. Not after this. The wound sealed. Slowly, Kade opened his eyes. His voice was faint, but his humor survived. Was that a marriage vow part? Kaelis laughed through her tears, leaning in close. No, she whispered, brushing her forehead against his. This is. She kissed him. There was no ceremony. No ancient rite. Just breath. Just warmth. Just the moment the stars had waited for. Vaerra looked away, a rare softness touching her regal features. She rose, scanning the chamber, then activated the colony's final beacon. Signal sent. Enemies routed. The bond complete. 3 days later, they stood beneath the twin moons of Carus, the ruins of the research colony behind them. The sky was quiet now. The danger gone. But something deeper had taken root. Kade watched the horizon, arms crossed, Kaelis at his side. She leaned into him easily now, like she'd always been meant to. Vaerra joined them, her posture still proud but lighter. "You've changed us," she said. Kade looked over. "Wasn't trying to. All true change begins like that." She handed him a small sphere glowing, breathing like it held something alive. "What is it?" "A sigil of acknowledgement. You are now bound by law to the Safari Triad. That means you have protection, power, and responsibility." Kade took it, rolling it in his fingers. "I was just trying to stop a storm. And you became the Eye of One," Kaelis said, threading her fingers into his. They stood there, quiet, the three of them. Not royalty and mechanic. Not alien and human. Just bonded souls beneath the stars. Kade thought he was just saving a stranger. Instead, he found a destiny he never asked for, etched in alien law and sealed by something deeper than choice, connection. Now bound to Kaelis and Vaerra in a triad of soul and purpose, he's no longer just a mechanic. He's a keeper of the site. A protector of legacy. A partner in love, in ways even he doesn't fully understand yet. But make no mistake, this is just the beginning. Would you accept a bond that rewrites your DNA, your fate, your very understanding of love? Let me know in the comments. Should Kade trust the prophecy, or run before it consumes him? And if you're as tangled up in this starlit romance as I am, hit subscribe. There's a galaxy more coming.